Hey there, internets. This is Kyle coming to you once again with another edition of the My Business Launch Secrets YouTube channel. We are on day 63, I think. I keep saying it wrong in the videos, and then I look back at my records and I'm like, oh shit, like I said the wrong number. But I'm obviously not going to edit it because I don't really care. But I think we're on 63 today, so a little over 2 months in. And continue to make a little progress. Just finished recording another podcast episode for the PhD Secrets podcast, which will kind of be one of the core content generation methods for the new business, the PhD Boss. It's kind of the overall business name. And as I mentioned yesterday, I just kind of sat down and recorded the first one yesterday just to kind of get the ball rolling. I know I've been dragging my feet a little bit on getting down to it just because I've felt like I don't have kind of a clear message yet or story I want to deliver per se. I mean, not to say I don't have ideas for what things to talk about, because I do. I have kind of a running list of things I brainstormed on several weeks back that should keep me busy for a while. But just how do I actually deliver that message in a podcast type format, I just struggled with. But again, just decided, hey, the first 50 of these are probably going to suck anyway, but that's okay. I just got to get through them before I start to get into a rhythm of understanding how I want to present this type of information and start to, hopefully get some kind of a response from people in terms of the content that I'm delivering, and being able to kind of tailor in based on what the response is from people that hopefully will start listening or watching on the YouTubes. But excuse me, one thing I did find valuable from one of Russ Brunson's podcasts today that I was listening to, the Marketing Secrets podcast, was here, episode 232. I actually pulled up the old website because I wanted to go back and listen to parts of it here as I was sitting down before I recorded the podcast, because this particular podcast, he talked about the framework plus the 4 secret steps, and he was kind of highlighting, he was at a recent event and was just kind of paying attention to how those speakers at this event were presenting or teaching their information about the given topics they were covering, and then he was kind of reflecting on how does he teach his core principles and things and the various events and info products obviously that he does, and he kind of laid it out here in a relatively straightforward, simple kind of manner with these 4 steps of how you should be presenting information. And he was obviously kind of talking about it in the context of, if you are giving a talk somewhere to a group of people about a given topic, how would you sort of structure your presentation? But again, you can really take the same sort of core building blocks and apply them to any medium, such as a podcast, which is what I thought I would do, because it at least gives me a framework by which I can explain my own frameworks, if you will. And so the 4 secret steps are, number 1, giving some background to how you discovered this framework that you were going to be teaching on, ideally providing some story that illustrates, hey, I really struggled with X for 10 years, and then I discovered this 4-step pathway to whatever, lose weight or something. So telling the story, number 1, for how you came to discover this thing, that's sort of your hook to get people to sort of pay attention to what you're going to explain. Again, he kind of highlights, if you leave out that piece of it and you just sort of get into, hey, these are the 4 steps, blah, then people are more likely to just kind of walk away going oh, cool, that was interesting. But when you tell them, hey, these are all the struggles I had, or here's some specific story about how I kind of discovered what I'm going to be talking to, well, now people kind of have a a point of reference by which they can now anchor the lesson that you are about to deliver with some actual experience that you had in your life that probably they can relate to in some way. So I think even just from a physiological, like memory type of perspective, having something that provides some context for the information that they're about to receive helps kind of attach that in your muscle memory brain, I don't know, whatever. I think it does that better. Yeah, and that's Russell didn't go into that aspect of it, but I've kind of heard that more or less from other things I've read over the years, that providing some more experiential context to what you're about to talk about kind of helps those memories sort of stick in your brain. So anyway, start off with that, giving some story about explaining how you came up with this. Number two, actually explaining what the thing is. These are my 4 steps. And then number 3 is the how you would, I guess, implement those 4 steps of the framework. And then number 4 step is providing examples, maybe showing again how you have applied these things in your own life, which again sort of just further reinforces that, yeah, these aren't just 4 random things I kind of came up with in my sleep last night. I've actually been applying these in my own life. And like, here's some specific examples. So I took that sort of 4-step process and just relatively quickly, again, I'm trying to be sure I come up with a relatively efficient way to start churning out these podcast episodes, because, again, I just don't have the time to spend days coming up with a perfect structure for a single podcast episode. Because if I spent days doing that, then it's like I would only be putting out a single podcast a week, and then it would just take me forever to really get a significant amount of content put out there. So I need to come up with a more efficient way of doing all this. So I just said, okay, these are the 4 things. I again had a list of topics of things I want to talk about, or just random ideas I generated previously. I just went through that list, pulled one out of there, went through this 4-step process, really quickly. And frankly, I probably didn't do it great. I was trying to think of stories, and I don't know if I had great concrete examples, but I came up with something at least. There were a little bit more generic stories than specific things, which, again, I think people would argue that the more specific you can be in your stories, the better it is from a storytelling perspective. But whatever, it is what it is. Also, because I kind of struggle with, when it comes to me telling stories, given that I'm still working in the field that I'm kind of talking about, I hesitate to share tons of details about certain things I've done in my career, just because I'm still in my career. I'm still doing the thing. So, not to say whatever my coworkers are ever going to find this podcast or whatever, but it's possible. And, I have to be a little careful, I guess, with a certain level of detail that I go into, just to protect the innocent, more or less. But, nevertheless, I wrote, I just kind of jotted down some notes on my computer here, and then just turned on the cameras like I did yesterday, started recording. One thing that I kind of struggle with is understanding kind of the pacing of the podcast episode, and even also the length of how long it should be. I was in my mind notionally thinking I should try to target kind of a 20-minute podcast, which is kind of about the length of Russell's Marketing Secrets podcasts. They're usually 15 to 20 minutes a pop, and I don't know really what the frequency is putting them out now, but in the years I'm listening to, I think he was putting out maybe roughly 2 a week, sometimes less, depending on things that were going on with his schedule. But I think he was trying to put out 2 or maybe even 3 a week, 20-minute podcasts. And yeah, it's not, I don't think, for a style of podcast, which is just me sharing some information. This is not like an interview style podcast where obviously you could go on much longer because you got two people having a dialogue about a topic. This is just me, again, sharing information that I want to share. I think keeping those a little bit shorter is fine. But, I mean, the episode I did right now, today, once I cut out and edit it down a little bit, I mean, it'll probably be like definitely close to 15 minutes, maybe slightly under that. And I don't know, for some reason I had in my mind I want to get closer to 20 minutes, but I guess it doesn't really matter at this point. So that's fine. I think maybe once I get a little better at the whole storytelling thing, then I can, kind of draw those out a little bit more to, hopefully be a little bit more impactful overall, and can kind of continue working on that. So that's where I'm at on the podcast. And now, of course, I'm going to try to record one like every day, before I record these Business Launch Secrets little chats that we have. Thank you to those of you that are watching. Please like and subscribe to YouTube to help the YouTube algorithm. Tell your friends and family. If they're wanting to watch some middle-aged dude on the internet try to make $1 million. So I'm going to hopefully end up, with a fair amount of video content that obviously I will be using the audio of that for the podcast, but then also editing it to uploading to the YouTubes on the PhD Boss YouTube channel. But that just means I'm going to eventually have to start doing a lot of video editing, which not super looking forward to. Not that I don't find that interesting, but just because I know it's going to take me a while to just learn some basic things about video editing. Which actually I have, I guess, done some video editing in the past, but never with like having dual camera setups and figuring out the best time, transitioning between one or the other. And, of course, all the cool YouTubers, it's like you want to kind of zoom in to your face if you're emphasizing some point and zoom back out and all that sort of stuff. So that just means like you have to really sit there and watch the content like multiple times and figuring out where the right cuts are and whatnot. And so again, even for like a 15 or 20 minute clip that I've recorded, you can imagine if you're more or less kind of having to watch through that, multiple times, then obviously you're going to be sitting down to edit this thing for like at least, 2 hours. Probably for me starting out, it's probably going to take me like more like 3 hours to come up with something that I'd be pretty happy with. And on top of that, I still got to record a couple of short clips to use for my intro and outro that I've talked about in the past, and kind of come up with a script for what those are going to look like and all that good stuff. So definitely a lot of work on the horizon. Switching gears a little bit, one thought I had, I guess another podcast I listened to today, Russell was talking about something about like maybe one of his former inner circle members or something had brought up to him that it was the most important thing that they found in starting a business was having a core group of not partners exactly, but just a core support group, I guess, more or less, or accountability group of people that you develop good relationships with, so that, he was talking about it in the context of like you could help promote each other's products and this sort of thing, which I don't really want to get into that, but the takeaway I had from it was more like, obviously this whole game is pretty hard, especially when you're getting started out, so at least having some other people that you can kind of go to and just kind of sound off on from time to time, get some perspective from somebody that's actually paying attention to what you're doing, as opposed to just, again, waiting from your random potential customer or client that happens upon you and gives you some feedback about what you're doing. Having somebody else that's in the business, or at least trying to do the business, similar business to what you're doing, it would be helpful. And I've talked in the past, like, I'm not paying for any sort of coaching or accountability partner sort of thing, because I don't, frankly, I just don't want to spend much more money right now than I already have spent on this whole endeavor. But I was thinking, I mean, maybe I should just go up on one of the several ClickFunnels related Facebook groups and just post like, hey, you know, I want to get together a group of like 4 other dudes that are more or less starting out in terms of in building an expert based online business as I'm trying to do. And hey, let's just like hop on a Zoom call once a week and just chat for an hour or whatever, and try to help each other out to whatever degree we can, and at least just be there to talk about the frustrations or the challenges or whatever. But ultimately, using that as kind of a forcing function to, number one, sort of push me out of my element, which is more like I just would rather do everything on my own and not really get any outside support or help. But number two, as Russell and others talk about, you know, there's a lot of value of you sort of giving to other people in this whole universe karma thing or whatever. You know, if the more you're able to kind of serve others and help others along their journey, usually ends up coming back to help you in ways that you may not even recognize or appreciate or expect, you know, of course, at the time that you're trying to give to others. So the only way to do that is for me to get around some people that I think I might be able to serve in some way. And frankly, the idea of just doing this through an online thing versus like going finding some local entrepreneur group or whatever, the online thing is more appealing because I don't want to go to some local thing where it's probably more people that are like full-time entrepreneurs. Like, that's not who I really want to connect with, because that's not what where I'm at and what I'm doing. I want to find other people that are just doing this part-time because they got real responsibilities and they got a day job they want to keep up and all that sort of thing. But that we could try to help each other out in this whole journey. So that was just a thought I had. I don't know. Maybe I should do that. Shoot me a comment down in the comments below if you think that's a good idea, and I should reach out and try to get some help along this thing. Because it is taxing, and I don't, you know, I'm staying up here past midnight on a daily basis when I know the kids are going to be up at like 6:30 in the morning, and me personally, I function better on more having the like 7 or 8 hours of sleep a night, but I'm not getting that for sure. But for now, for me, that's worth it. And again, I try to keep the long-term goal and long-term vision in mind of what I'm trying to do. The other thing Russell talked about in a separate podcast episode was that he finds people who have a skeptical mindset going into all this are generally the ones that will typically always fail. And although he kind of says like, yeah, you just can't be skeptical. You just have to go in, like, just go all in, like, just believe you can do it. Of course, then he says, well, you know, but on one hand, of course, I realize, you know, you shouldn't just jump on every opportunity, because obviously you would just be dumping a lot of money into things that might not really be worth it at all. So on the flip side, he's kind of like, well, maybe you should be a little cautious, I guess, in terms of things that you jump into in this whole online business space. But point taken that, and again, I've sort of talked about this in the past, just having the right mindset and understand that, you know, there's no reason I can't be successful at doing what I'm doing. I mean, I mean, again, I just think there's too many examples out there of people who have had success by starting from pretty much nothing, zero following, zero audience, finding the right niche, finding the right product, doing the right marketing, and becoming wildly successful. I mean, there's just tons of examples out there of those types of people, and not to say like I think I'm better than any of them, but I mean, I think I have a, distinctive skill set and a drive. I mean, I've accomplished, I would say, quite a bit in my life so far that I'm, different things I'm proud of in very different areas of my life, from, professional side of things to hobbies that I, became very proficient at and did very well, just because I got very interested in them and I knew how to sort of do the right things to make significant progress in a relatively short amount of time. And so I sort of look at it as, if I'm seeing all these people on the internet that, again, started more or less from nothing and built up something pretty ginormous, like, I mean, they don't have any specific skill set that I don't think I couldn't develop over a reasonable period of time. And with my just kind of general personality type of being one that's pretty well organized, able to kind of keep track of a lot of different things going on, juggle a lot of different moving parts simultaneously, not letting anything really fall through the cracks. Like, I think I definitely can do this, and that's why I'm doing this. I mean, ultimately, it's, if I didn't think I had the capacity to achieve this, I mean, I wouldn't be wasting my time trying to do what I'm doing. I would just, again, follow the traditional route, stick in my day job, save as much money as I could into the 401k and just retire at 67, 70 years old, whatever, in the traditional fashion, and that would be okay. But I know I can do much more than that. And I also recognize, though, that it's not going to happen overnight. And obviously this channel is built around this whole goal of me trying to get to $1 million in a year. But as I mentioned before, that is kind of a pretty high bar sort of goal. And I'm not going to get discouraged or become skeptical of this whole process if I don't reach that goal in a year. Because I know that a lot of the things I'm doing are pretty new to me. They're new skills that I just need to develop, and the only way I'm going to develop them is by doing them. So that's what I'm just trying to do, the doing, whatever. And recognize that over a longer time horizon, I will get better at them. And once I get better at them, eventually, as Russell talks about, as you're pushing this boulder up a hill, like, you will reach, it's inevitable that you're going to reach a point that you're going to get the boulder up to the top of the hill, and then you can start to see the fruits of your labor, where it starts to roll a bit more on its own, and you're reaping the fruits of your labor overall. Of course, then he highlights that you then have new problems to deal with, and et cetera, et cetera. But in any case, I'm going to leave it there for now and go to bed. So I hope you're all doing well. Keep on kicking ass, taking names, and I'll see you next time. Peace.